No one tells you that healing feels like losing people. You expect it to feel like relief, like finally putting down a weight you have been carrying so long it had started to feel like part of you. You expect the therapy sessions and the journal entries and the slow, deliberate work of looking honestly at yourself to eventually arrive somewhere quieter, somewhere safer, somewhere that finally feels like home. What you do not expect is the silence, not the peaceful kind, the other kind, the kind that appears in the spaces where certain people used to be. The kind you notice on a Friday night when you look at your phone and realize there is no one you want to call, not because no one cares about you, but because the version of you that used to fit easily into those conversations no longer does. The kind that arrives after you say something honest about how you feel and watch someone shift uncomfortably in their seat, as if your healing is an accusation. You thought you were getting better, and in every way that counts, you are. And yet somehow, quietly, without anyone announcing it, without any obvious ending, you are more alone than you were before you started. This is the loneliness no one warns you about. The one that does not come from being unwanted or unloved or left behind. The one that comes from growing, from changing at a pace and in a direction that the life you built while you were wounded cannot always follow. If you have ever sat inside the strange grief of becoming someone new and finding, to your bewilderment, that the world around you feels less familiar for it, then this is for you. Before we go any deeper, share in the comments where you are watching from and whether this is something you have felt. Because I think this particular loneliness is one of the most common hidden experiences of healing and one of the least talked about. And there is something powerful about knowing you are not feeling it alone. Stay until the end of this video, because what I am going to share in the second half completely changes how you understand this loneliness, and more importantly, what it is actually telling you. Now, let me say something first that matters before anything else. This loneliness is not evidence that healing is failing. It is not a sign that you made a mistake by starting. It is not proof that something is wrong with you, or that you pushed people away, or that the work you are doing is somehow creating more damage than it repairs. What it is, and I want you to hold this until the science deepens it, is one of the most reliable signs that healing is real. That it is not performance, not the surface kind that changes your language without changing your nervous system. Not the kind that learns the words without shifting the actual internal architecture of who you are and what you will accept. The loneliness of healing is not a side effect to be fixed. It is a feature. And once you understand why, it loses most of its power to convince you that something has gone wrong. Let me tell you about Layla. Layla started therapy at 26, not because of a crisis. There was no single breaking point, no dramatic collapse. It was something slower than that. A creeping awareness that the life she was living had been built not around what she actually needed, but around what other people needed from her. That she had spent most of her life being extraordinarily good at taking up exactly the right amount of space. Not too much, never enough to inconvenience anyone, always exactly what the room required. She was, by any external measure, doing fine. She had friends. She was reliable, warm, funny in a self-deprecating way that people found easy to be around. She said yes when she meant no. She managed her anxiety privately, absorbed other people's moods without complaint, and had developed over many years a near-perfect ability to sense what a situation needed from her and deliver it before anyone had to ask. She did not know yet that this was not strength. She would learn that slowly. The first year of therapy changed very little on the outside, but something was shifting underneath. She began for the first time to notice the difference between what she felt and what she performed. She started to hear her own voice, not the one she used in rooms full of other people, but the quieter one that had been speaking underneath it for years, saying things she had never allowed to reach the surface. She set her first real boundary at 27, a small one. She told a friend she could not be available for late-night crisis calls every night, that she needed her sleep, that she needed something to be saved for herself. A reasonable thing, a human thing. The friend did not speak to her for 2 weeks. And Layla sat inside the silence of that, confused, guilty, wondering if she had done something wrong, until her therapist said something that rearranged the way she was seeing it. The people who are most upset by your boundaries are usually the people who most benefited from you having none. That was the beginning, not of the healing, that had already started, but of understanding what the healing was going to cost her. Because here is what started happening to Layla over the following months. Here is what happens to almost everyone who does this work seriously, who goes beyond the language of healing into the actual structural changes underneath. She started losing people, not in dramatic ways, not through fights or betrayals or formal endings, in quieter ways. A friend she had known for 8 years slowly stopped calling, not because of any single thing, but because Layla had stopped being the version of herself that friendship had been built on, the one who always had capacity, the one who made herself smaller so the other person could feel larger, the one who laughed things off that actually hurt and said, "I'm fine," when she wasn't, and never, not once, asked for anything in return. That version of Layla was very easy to be friends with. The new one, the one with an opinion, the one who named when something hurt, the one who occasionally said, "I'm not okay," and meant it, was less convenient. And Layla found herself in the middle of real healing, more alone than she had been in years. Layla's story is not unusual. It is the story of almost everyone who heals in a way that is real rather than performed. And if you see yourself in it, if any of this feels uncomfortably familiar from the inside, then you already know what I mean when I say this particular loneliness is one of the most misunderstood experiences in all of personal growth. Psychologists have studied this dynamic for decades, and what the research reveals is not just that this loneliness is common, it is that it is, on a deep structural level, almost inevitable. Murray Bowen, the psychiatrist who spent his life mapping how family systems and close relationships actually function, introduced a concept he called differentiation of self. The higher your level of differentiation, Bowen found, the more capable you are of maintaining a distinct, stable sense of who you are inside the emotional field of your closest relationships, without needing everyone around you to remain the same in order for you to feel secure. And here is what Bowen's decades of research showed that almost no one in the self-help world talks about. When one person in a relationship system begins to differentiate, to develop a clearer, more grounded identity, the system itself resists. It pulls. It exerts pressure, often through guilt, withdrawal, or the quiet withdrawal of warmth to bring the person back to their previous position. Not out of cruelty, out of homeostasis. The same biological drive that keeps your body temperature stable also drives your social systems to resist change. In other words, the people around you are not being cruel when they respond to your healing with discomfort. They are doing what all living systems do when one of their parts shifts position. They are attempting, unconsciously, to restore equilibrium. And the person who is healing, who is refusing for the first time to go back to the previous position, experiences that resistance as loss, as loneliness, as the specific, bewildering grief of doing everything right and feeling somehow worse for it. Carl Jung called this process individuation, the long and genuinely costly journey of becoming, at the deepest level, yourself, not the self you adapted to be in order to survive your early environment, not the self that learned to perform safety or shrink to fit or be endlessly available in order to remain loved. The actual self, the one underneath all the adaptation. Jung was not romantic about what this costs. He called the shadow, the parts of us we suppressed, the needs we buried, the voice we silenced, a dark passenger. And he said something that I want you to sit with. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. When healing begins, when the unconscious starts becoming conscious, the patterns that held your relationships in their current shape begin to shift. The silence where your people-pleasing used to be is not comfortable for anyone. The boundary where your availability used to be creates a new geography in the relationship. The honesty where your management used to be changes the emotional temperature of every room you walk into. And some people, the ones whose relationship with you was built primarily on the version of you that was still wounded, still performing, still available without limit, those people will not know what to do with the new architecture. They will not know where to stand. And without meaning to, without any malice, they will begin to move away. This is not your fault. This is not their fault. This is what happens when growth changes the shape of a person and the people who loved the previous shape have not yet found their footing with the new one. But here is where it gets even more precise, because this is the layer that most conversations about the loneliness of healing never reach. There is something buried inside this particular grief that completely inverts how it feels to carry it. And when you see it, when you really see it, the loneliness does not disappear, but it stops feeling like evidence of failure. It starts feeling like something else entirely. Hold that, because that is exactly where we are going. Here is the paradox that lives at the heart of this loneliness, and it asks something of you to hold it fully. The relationships you are losing, or the distance you are feeling inside the relationships that remain, are not casualties of your healing. In most cases, they are products of your wounding. Think about that carefully. When you are living from the wounded place, from the anxiety, the people-pleasing, the fawn response, the endless availability, the self-erasure, you are not choosing your relationships with the clearest part of you. You are attracting and maintaining them with the part of you that had learned, somewhere early and somewhere painful, that love is conditional. That connection requires performance. That the safest way to keep people close is to never cost them anything. And so the friendships and dynamics that formed around that version of you were, again, without any cruelty, without any conscious design, often built on a foundation of your limitlessness. Your capacity to absorb, your silence around your own needs, your willingness to be the strong one, the stable one, the available one, no matter what was happening inside. Those relationships did not love the real you. They loved what you did for them. And now that you have stopped doing it, now that you are for the first time showing up as someone who also has needs, who also requires consideration, who also gets tired and hurt and wants to be held rather than always doing the holding, some of those relationships do not survive. Not because love was never there, but because the dynamic that held them together was never quite about you. That is a grief that is allowed to be a grief. It is real. It hurts in the specific way that only a loss can hurt when you finally understand what was actually being lost. Not just the relationship, but the illusion that the relationship was what you thought it was. And then, underneath that grief, there is the other side of the paradox. The relationships that survive your healing, or the new ones that begin to form as you become more fully yourself, these are built on something completely different. They are not built on your performance of strength. They are not held together by your silence, or your smallness, or your willingness to need nothing. They are built on you, the actual you, the one who healed, the one who said, quietly, privately, without anyone watching, I will not keep shrinking to fit a life that was built for a version of me that does not exist anymore. And those connections, when they come, and they come, are not the kind you exhaust yourself maintaining. They do not require translation. They do not ask you to be anything other than what you actually are. The loneliness you are in right now is not a destination. It is a corridor, the space between the life that was built around your wounding and the life that is being built around your wholeness. The gap between who you were and who you are becoming. And corridors, by definition, do not last. And neuroscience confirms this in a way that makes the experience land differently when you understand it. Researchers at UCLA found something that, once you hear it, you cannot unhear. The same neural pathways that process physical pain also process social rejection and disconnection. The brain does not distinguish, at the level of raw experience, between being physically hurt and losing a relationship. The ache of loneliness is not metaphorical. It is biological, measurable, real in the same way that a broken bone is real, which means the loneliness of healing, the particular ache of losing relationships that cannot survive your growth, is not you being dramatic. Not you being ungrateful for your progress. Not you failing to appreciate how far you have come. It is your nervous system accurately processing a genuine loss. And here is the second thing neuroscience shows us, which is the hopeful side of this. The brain is not fixed. Neuroplasticity, the brain's lifelong capacity to form new neural pathways through new experience, means that the patterns laid down in the wounded years are not your permanent architecture. Every time you tolerate something you used to tolerate and choose not to. Every time you set a limit where there was none. Every time you let yourself be seen without managing the other person's reaction to what they see. You are physically building new circuitry, new internal references for what safety feels like when it is real rather than performed. New templates for what closeness looks like when it does not require you to disappear into it. New evidence laid down slowly in the brain's own tissue that you can be fully yourself and still be loved. The loneliness is part of the rewiring. It is the sensation of the old pathways losing their grip before the new ones are strong enough to feel certain. It is not the end of the story. It is the part of the story just before the turn. So what do you do with it? Not to fix it, because there is nothing to fix, but to carry it differently. To be inside it with more accuracy and less panic. The first thing is the simplest and the hardest. Name it for what it is. Not something is going wrong, not I pushed everyone away, not healing isn't working. The accurate name is this: I am in transition. I am in the corridor between the life I built while I was wounded and the life that is forming around who I actually am. And corridors are, by nature, disorienting. They are not the room you left and not yet the room you are going to. They feel like nowhere. That feeling of nowhere is not permanent, but it cannot be rushed. The second thing is to grieve the relationships you are losing properly without minimizing them. Not with the story that they were never real because they were real to the person you were then, and that person deserved the love they found even if the foundation was not what you now understand it to have been. Grieve them. Let them be a loss. The grief is not a sign that healing was wrong. It is the emotional immune system doing its job, processing what the growth has dislodged so that it does not have to be carried silently into what comes next. You are not cold for outgrowing something. You are not selfish for needing more than you were given. You are not too much for the people who knew you as not enough. The third thing is this: begin to notice in the quieter moments what is still here. Not what the healing has cost, you already know that list, but what it has revealed. The one friend who did not need you to be small to feel comfortable. The conversation that happened after you stopped performing and something truer came through. The moment of genuine rest, the kind that is actually restful, not just the absence of being called upon, that arrived once you stopped making yourself available for everything. The first time someone saw you clearly, without the management, without the performance, and stayed anyway. Those moments are the evidence of the new architecture forming. They are quiet. They do not announce themselves. They do not arrive with the urgency or the volume of the loneliness. But they are there, and they are more solid than almost anything you built during the years you were still performing. Because they are built on the version of you that is actually real. If you have stayed with me this far, maybe because some part of this felt uncomfortably, specifically familiar, then I want you to hear something directly. The loneliness you are carrying right now is not the proof that healing broke something. It is the proof that healing is real. It is what happens when a person stops performing their life and begins to actually live it. When the distance between who you were and who you are becoming becomes visible. When the relationships built on your smallness feel the wind of your expansion and cannot quite hold their shape. That is not failure. That is the most honest thing that has ever happened to you. You are allowed to grieve what the healing has cost you, without using that grief as a reason to stop healing. You are allowed to feel lonely in the corridor without deciding the corridor is your permanent home. You are allowed to miss the version of your life that was easier to maintain, even as you understand that it was built on your own disappearance. You are allowed to need time, real time. The unhurried, unscheduled, cannot be rushed time that real growth requires. Because here is the truth that sits at the center of all of this. The people who find you after you have healed, or the people already in your life who grow to meet the version of you that is no longer performing, they are going to love something real, not the version of you that made itself infinitely available, not the version that laughed things off and said, "I'm fine," and never, not once, asked for anything in return. They are going to love the version of you that cost something. That takes up genuine space. That knows what it needs and can for the first time say so. The version that went through the corridor and survived it and came out the other side, not smaller, but real. The loneliness no one warned you about is not the price of healing.